Hey everyone, and a massive welcome to all the healthcare professionals tuning in today. Let's just jump right into it, shall we? Today, we are unpacking a really crucial academic analysis that directly touches on the grueling, vital work you're doing on the front lines every single day. We are talking about TB treatment, more specifically, the directly observed treatment system. You know it, you live it, it's DOT. Now, for decades, people have been circling around this one question. Does DOT actually work? Well, buckle up because today's explainer is going to completely flip how we view this tool. Okay, let's take a quick look at our roadmap. We'll start with the global TB problem and that endless academic debate. Then, we'll talk about why we need to move past purely quantitative research, dive into real-world effectiveness, and look at why boots-on-the-ground management is the actual core of the issue. Finally, we'll cover how to build a community DOT culture and put an end to this debate once and for all. All right, Section 1, the TB problem and the ongoing debate. Let's get into it. 10 million. Just pause and think about that number for a second. 10 million. That is not just a statistic on a page. That is the number of brand new tuberculosis cases popping up globally every single year. It's like a mid-sized country of new infections annually. This massive scale just absolutely highlights the urgency here. We don't just need treatments that look pretty in a textbook. We desperately need methods that actually work out there in the messy real world, right in the neighborhoods where you operate. And to get to the bottom of this, our analysis today is leaning heavily on a really fantastic breakdown from the Thai Journal of Tuberculosis, Chest Diseases, and Critical Care, specifically an article authored by Dr. Panchai Radhasuan. It's such a refreshing read because it skips the ivory tower theory and takes a straightforward, honest look at the exact operational hurdles that frontline workers face day in and day out. Let's rewind a bit to see how we got here. Back in 1993, the WHO officially declared TB a global emergency, right? And they heavily pushed DOT as the gold standard of care. But then, things got a little muddy. Between 1998 and 2007, a bunch of randomized controlled trials started coming out, and they started questioning whether DOT actually worked any better than self-administered therapy. Suddenly, the medical community was totally split. It became this heavily debated, unresolved issue that researchers just couldn't agree on. Which brings us to Section 2. We really need to talk about moving beyond just quantitative research. So the author points out a fascinating flaw in how we've been looking at this. Relying purely on quantitative data, just crunching the numbers, can actually totally mislead us. Think about it. If a study shows that DOT and self-administered therapy have the exact same success rate, the knee-jerk reaction is to say, well, DOT is useless. But actually, it might just mean the overall program management in that specific area was fundamentally broken from the start. Or, on the flip side, if both methods show amazing results in a trial, it could literally just be the Hawthorne effect. You know, patients acting like perfect angels and taking their meds flawlessly simply because they know a researcher is watching them. These cold, hard numbers often completely obscure the reality on the ground. All right, moving to Section 3, real-world effectiveness. We have to draw a hard line between two concepts here. Efficacy is how a drug performs in a pristine, perfectly controlled laboratory bubble. But effectiveness, that's how it holds up out in the field, dealing with missed appointments, terrible weather, and complex patient lives. The key takeaway here is that DOT isn't some magic clinical pill. It's actually a management tool. Its entire purpose is to pull the real-world effectiveness of a TB drug regimen as close to its ideal laboratory efficacy as humanly possible. And I absolutely love this quote from the journal. It says, DOT needs the health personnel's understanding way more than their academic knowledge. It hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Making DOT work isn't about memorizing medical textbooks. It's about empathy. It relies entirely on your proactive understanding of a patient's personal context and stepping up to the responsibility of tailoring this tool to fit seamlessly into their actual everyday life. So, Section 4, why management is the absolute heartbeat of this whole operation. If you want DOT to actually succeed at the district level, it's not about clinical trials anymore, it's pure program management. It boils down to 4 practical steps. 1, you've got to mobilize every local resource you can find. 2, set up physical DOT corners right there in the community where people can easily reach them. 3, you need to build a rock-solid, reliable drug delivery network. And 4, and this is a big one, you have to use heavy-duty negotiation and communication skills to help patients let their guard down and accept the treatment. And here is the so what. When you manage those local programs effectively, the clinical payoffs are just huge. First, you rapidly snap the chain of transmission. Boom, it's done. Second, you actively prevent the emergence of drug-resistant TB, which, as we all know, is an absolute nightmare for public health. And third, you shrink the chances of a patient relapsing down to the absolute minimum. All of that comes from stellar management, not just handing out pills. Let's jump to Section 5, Building a Real Community. Culture. Look, let's be totally real for a second. If you're a healthcare worker who has spent even a day in the field, you know that when you first launch DOT, it is an absolute grind. It is exhausting. You are burning physical and mental energy, tracking people down, pleading with them, negotiating. The author fully recognizes that struggle. But here is the light at the end of the tunnel. If you push through that initial friction and enforce it consistently, the long-term payoff is incredible. It actually becomes so much easier to run overtime. Because think about what happens when consistent DOT becomes a habit. It shifts from being this top-down medical mandate into a shared community discipline. The locals start seeing the benefits with their own eyes. Eventually, when someone gets sick, they just willingly walk down to their local health facility every day. You don't have to chase them, you don't have to negotiate anymore. And the result? The entire community effectively builds a fortress against drug-resistant strains. You've essentially outsourced the motivation to the community itself. And finally, Section 6, Putting the DOT debate to rest for good. The journal's conclusion here is wonderfully blunt. It basically says we need to stop arguing about whether DOT works. The debate is over. DOT is unequivocally, without a doubt, an essential standard tool to control TB anywhere on the planet. It's not some ongoing experiment that needs endless debate. We know it works. The variable now is simply how well we manage it locally. Before we officially wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought, something to really chew on during your next shift. When you are out there working with TB patients, are you just dispensing medication to check a box and fulfill a duty? Or are you using DOT as a foundational tool to build a genuine, self-sustaining culture of care within your community? The difference between those two mindsets changes absolutely everything. Thank you so much for joining me today. Keep up the incredible work out there, and I'll catch you next time.